Hello, and welcome to the Conspiracy of Goodness podcast, where every week you'll hear conversations with experts who are knee deep in solving some of the world's most important problems. And yet, all these people think the future is still bright for us all. We need to know what they know. We need to see their vision of possibility. And on this podcast, you're going to know how to tune your life towards that same kind of sense of purpose and meaning that these folks live every day. And then hopefully you'll be able to live with purpose and meaning too. This is the problem of our times. I think the pandemic has led us all to kind of question what we were doing with our time, our work, our personal life, the busyness level, and what we really want to do with our precious time going forward. So this podcast is going to introduce you to all kinds of people who have figured that out. And along the way, they're going to give us very practical tools for how we can live lives of purpose and meaning too. I'm Dr. Liesl Ulrich, founder of Ever Widening Circles. We've been writing articles, thousands of them, about insight and innovation going uncelebrated. And this world is still very amazing, I'm here to tell you. And our guest today is going to reiterate that just as strongly with me as I do, because she's the CEO of Ever Widening Circles and my daughter, Liesl Ulrich-Verderber. So Liesl, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me back.
Well, this is part two of a conversation that we started recently, kind of co-mingling these insights that I've been getting now for almost a year from these weekly podcast interviews with thought leaders all over the world. And then what Liesl knows is to be true from her generational experience and the future. I always like to say that Liesl and my young team at Ever Widening Circles are right on the horizon. They can look over and see what's coming better than I can. But what I have is that 100,000-foot look from the past. So it's a good matchup. And today we're here to bring you the insights that we're both gleaning from our different vantage points. The main thing we want to do today is share a little bit more about meaning, purpose, and goals, which is something we talked about last week. So we're going to continue that. And today we're going to tell you a bunch of stories, people that we've written articles about and found extraordinary examples of the way ordinary people can lead lives of purpose. So Liesl, welcome. What do you have to say on this subject to start out with?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate for people that either missed last episode or just tuning in for the first time here. As we talked about in our last discussion, living with purpose is something that we have become very close with because we have, over the past 7-8 years, been writing so much about people who are doing good in the world and capable of doing so much good in the world because they found a way to live with purpose. And last week we talked about sort of these 4, we call them mileposts that people have on their purpose-driven journey. The first one being the searching phase, this sort of like you're asking questions, something's sort of wrong or off, and you want to start living with purpose, but you don't know where to get started. And how a vital part of that is opening yourself up to curiosity. What do you want to learn more about, sort of in the searching mode? Then we talked about the learning phase, which is this phase where you kind of now know what you're headed towards. You may have a general direction. I know perhaps that I love gardening or knitting, or I love volunteering or teaching. And now you start to think about, how do I incorporate that into my life? What are the examples of that? And that's where things like this podcast and the articles that we've written about people that are doing stuff, and we'll share some of those stories with you, where they come in and they can be incredibly inspirational. And then we have this building phase, which is this phase where people start going from okay, I realize that it is possible to be a veteran who's a beekeeper who teaches other people. And now how do I start to build a life of me that has meaning and purpose? And that doesn't mean I drop everything and run off to the rainforest, start climbing trees myself, but maybe how do I start building this lifestyle, this balance that lets purpose enter my life in a more meaningful way? And then this last one of connection, of now that you've started to build a purpose driven life, you're going to want to connect with other people who are doing the same. And we've built a network that's sort of purpose built, for those kind of people that are driven to do good, living with purpose because they're drawn to do good in the world. So I just wanted to give that quick recap for people that missed out on last week, or I just want to remember again, because I think each of us is somewhere on that spectrum, and it is a spectrum. I think you can be searching but still wanting to be connecting. You can be, you can be learning and really wanting more building and learning at the same time concurrently. But I think those are the 4 mileposts that we've seen after 8 years of doing this, where people lie, especially when they come to us for the Ever Widening Circles articles. We see people along that spectrum all the time. So that's where we kind of get started today in this conversation, is really, when we think about that, I think it's good for us to start breaking down a little bit for people, what purpose means, what meaning means. We say, like, you want to live with meaning and purpose. And then I think start to break down a little bit, probably, the fallacy of goals. I know that I, for one, am somebody who is always setting goals, and feeling very much like they are empty. So I think we're going to touch a little bit on that today, and give you guys a more well-rounded understanding of what we mean when we say purpose and meaning, because we keep saying it over and over again, and give you guys some tangible examples of how you come about finding purpose and meaning in particular.
Perfect. That's a great recap. I would encourage you to go listen to the other episode. It may be a good preamble to this. We'll try and break up the shows up so they're super useful and practical, help both. A couple of things I just wanted to reiterate that are kind of milestones, as we try and cross this river of understanding, is that, first of all, just enjoy this chat, because we're going to tell some great stories of inspiring people, and we're going to have great show notes that'll direct you to the timing of different stories if you want to circle back. And Liesl and I are actually next week creating a course about cultivating your purpose and goals and motivation and meaning. So there's going to be more of this from the Ever Widening Circles team for sure. It's what we've learned ourselves from 8 years of curating good news from the internet about inspiring people. So just to kind of catch up, 2 big boulders in this river that we want to remember is that purpose is aspirational. It's always out in front of you. It's always looking forward. And meaning is something that you use to make sense of the past. So it's looking back at what happened, or it can even be right now in the present, looking at what's happening and having some sense of meaning, because we sometimes need that desperately. We're in the middle of a hot moment. It's important to be able to assign meaning. And if you've got your purpose, whether it's for a business meeting you're going into, or a last day of your vacation, or your big purpose, your big purpose reason for choosing to go to college or taking a job or whatever, if you have your purpose, it's something that directs your goals, helps you prioritize. It's the only way to prioritize, really. This is the thing. What I know a lot of people, and maybe you've seen this even in your circles, Liesl, but I've watched a lot of lives in my dental practice and my family and all these years. And it's easy to slip into this "I'll be happy when" way of living. And I think when I really look at how I've been in my mind when I lived like that, I'll be happy when I set a goal, I reach it, I don't even stop to celebrate. I just make the next random goal. That's a "I'll be happy when." We probably all know people like that who have like too many toys. That's an "I'll be happy when" life, because you always keep waiting for things or accomplishments or goals to make you happy, when all along, if you had a purpose, you could have enjoyed a joy and kind of delight of living every day. Talk to me about what you've seen in your generation with that "I'll be happy when."
I think that, I look at the "I'll be happy when" as more as like, it's like kind of written into the United States ethos. It's literally like the pursuit of happiness right there at the
Mm.
very founding documents of the United States. And so I think, people always bring this up. You can look at cultures around the world, and there's this And there's this feeling of contentedness, and we've written an article about it. I really strongly suggest you go take a look. It's about contentment versus happiness, and
Right.
how if we are constantly trying to pursue happiness, and I think this is really important as we think about defining purpose, is if you are defining purpose to seek out happiness, happiness is a very fleeting, it's a fleeting feeling. And
Mhm.
whereas contentment is something that is sustainable. It is that feeling that I wake up in the morning, and some mornings you're going to be delighted, but if you are content with, you can roll over and look out the view, or you can wake up and get your cup of coffee and feel that contentment. That is a feeling that is more sustainable, and one that I think we don't talk about quite enough or celebrate quite enough, because happiness is the peak, and sadness is the trough, and contentment is sort of in the middle. And it's not saying that we don't have aspirations. It's just if you're constantly in the pursuit of happiness, you will be in that pursuit forever, because it's a dopamine hit. It's not a sustainable feeling. So I think as we talk about purpose and we talk about meaning and we talk about all these big words, I think it's not to be in the pursuit of it's not in the pursuit of happiness. I think
Yeah.
it's more in the pursuit of contentment, of finding delight in small things and big things in your day, because it's not, that's what's sustainable. If happiness comes at the very pinnacle of things, and we can't always be up there, that would be nearly impossible. It's like you're constantly trying to climb the mountain. So that's what I see. And I think in my generation, I'm of the age where people have now been out of college for a certain amount of years, and they're either looking around at their job and saying, wow, I've been here for a while, I'm not really happy with this, or they're getting the itch to go off to grad school, or just finishing up with like med school or law school or something like that. And so I think there is right now in my age group of people sort of this unrest of being in transition, and of kind of wondering what will bring me contentment. What am I going to keep pursuing happiness like I saw my parents
Mhm.
pursue and feel stressed about all the time, or is there some middle ground of lifestyle and work and contentment that makes me have a more fulfilled and happy life than I saw people before me living? So I don't know, that's what I'm seeing from my
Mhm.
perspective in particular.
Great. And I definitely think, well, we have a module in the course that we're going to teach about the fact that when you find your purpose, it's like that horizon out there that is staying even though you might be in choppy seas all around you. If you can focus on that steady horizon, even in a storm, you can make your swings, like you just said, the extremes of emotion even out. And that is one of the signs of somebody who's found purpose, is that you're not ever too high or too low.
Hmm.
They have peace of mind most of the time.
Right. And I think
Yeah.
it gives you perspective, right? It gives you a gauge with which to look at the highs and the lows, right? To
Yeah,
create meaning.
absolutely.
Like you were saying,
Yeah.
if you understand, and I think this is true of so many of the thought leaders that we know and so many that we
Yes.
work with, um, they're not faking that contentment. And they're not cherry coating the low lows, and they're not forgetting to celebrate the high highs. And I think that's because at the level of purpose they found, of that finding that horizon, they're really capable of putting everything into perspective
Hmm.
in a quick way. It doesn't take
Hmm.
them that long to process what's going on and put it into
Yeah.
perspective.
Right, 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 right. And that's about getting through the moments, right? With a lot more peace of mind. So, um, I want to give people some real practical things to go to next after this chat. They're inspired. Do you know the article name of that one? Because that's a very important. And you saw me tapping away here just a second, looking to the right on my screen here. I put happiness in the search box, but that didn't bring up the article that you're talking about.
I
And
think,
and there's some great articles about happiness on Overwriting Circles.
yeah.
But this
I'm
article, we're going to look for it and put it in the show
And then
notes.
we'll put it in the show notes. Yeah,
Exactly.
I think the title does have something to do with happiness. It's like why you can't be happy all the time, or
Yeah,
you shouldn't
it's
be
something
happy all
like
the
that.
time, or something like that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I thought that would make it pop up, but I will tell people that if you want to listen to one of my podcast episodes that is so relatable and instant practical use, I have to think of Dr. Swikamar Rao's conversation with me. Oh, I think I must be thinking about it every day of my life. He's about the second or third podcast interview that we did. Dr. Rao is a fellow who's been at the highest levels of executive status in industry, and then he was for 12 years had one of the highest rated business courses that everybody wanted to get into at Columbia. And then he went off and he studied the world's greatest religions, and he took out all the religion and just kept the wisdom. And he's been going around the world teaching the wisdom of the world's greatest traditions for many, many years. So Dr. Rao has this amazing interview with me where you learn something we call in our family, good thing, bad thing. So gosh, it's a real practical thing. When something bad happens to you, he has this great parable from India that he tells, which I will save. So go listen to him tell it. I can never tell as good as he does. But it's a way of framing up everything that happens to you, good or bad, so that you keep this even keel and you can just be patient. And the way time unravels, very often some of the worst things that happen to us turn out to be the best. Mm-hmm. And so check out Dr. Rao's. We'll put that one in the show notes as well. But check out, it's RAO. I think it's maybe episode number 3. So so Liesl, let's get to some storytelling about people. Can you give people, just before we start, because many people listening to this podcast may never have been over at Ever Widening Circles. Can you give just a little gist of why we know these people and why these insights come so easy to us?
Yeah, so Ever Widening Circles is a positive media outlet that we started back in 2014. I came along in 2015, and over there we write about articles, write about things that change the negative dialogue about our times, right? These are things that are not like the cute little like boy saves puppy, which, like, I have a rescue dog. I love rescue dogs, totally into saving puppies, but those are not the kind of things that are going to keep you feeling good about the world when there's there's wildfires going on around the world, or knowledge of famine hits you. And our biggest thing is that for every problem there is in the world, there is somebody out there that's fixing it. And so our goal as writers, and as a media outlet, is to really be talking about the things that give people a more balanced worldview. Not that everything is rosy and perfect, but rather that there is a balance to this. And we need to share the stories of the people that are solving the world's biggest problems. And so as we've found, as we've told the stories of the people that have found stories of the people that are solving the world's biggest problems, there's the sentence. We've discovered these threads that run through all of them, and how so many of these people are living with purpose. And Mom, you can explain this far better than I can, but that as we're looking at this, we're looking at what a purpose-driven life looks like. We've been doing this research, and we found that there's like 3 major ways that people come to finding their purpose. And once that, and I'll let Mom talk about that matrix a little better, but once we looked at that matrix, suddenly it made so much sense. The stories of all these people that we've been writing about for the past 7 years, suddenly we were able to understand, oh, okay, yeah, this is how they got to where they are, and this is how we can help other people reach that same level of feeling that they live with purpose. So Mom, I'll let you explain that matrix, because you do it so much better than I do.
Oh, I'm just so familiar with it personally. Okay, so I really want to give credit to where credit's due here. And there's this amazing scientist, if you want to look up his work, he's at Cornell University. His name is Anthony Burrow, Burrow. Here's another great tip. If you want to learn about living with purpose, check out a wonderful podcast called Hidden Brain. Hidden Brain is a podcast that's the podcaster is a neuroscientist, but he makes neuroscience. He makes behavioral science, why we do what we do as humans, super practical and relatable. It's my favorite podcast. It really explains everybody I know and myself and all the crazy decisions we make. So check out Hidden Brain. There is an episode called Cultivating Your Purpose. And in that, it's just one aha moment after another. But something Anthony Burrows points out is that you can't go discover your purpose. I certainly know that, and I'll tell my story somewhere along the way here today. But there are 3 ways you can cultivate finding your purpose. And it turns out that people acquire their purpose, and he uses that word in a very interesting way. They acquire their purpose. Um, it's almost like it finds you instead of you finding it. Three ways. One is that they start following their curiosity. And I know that you're going to do a workshop next week for the Conspiracy of Goodness Network about curiosity and how it relates to purpose. So I'll steal just a teeny bit of your thunder here. Is that that first way of finding your purpose or living with more purpose is to follow your curiosity. There are people that just go deeper and deeper and deeper into something they love, whether it's the 7-string banjo or oceanography or calligraphy or whatever, that wind up at someplace new. They go deeper and deeper without even realizing they allow themselves the time and the space to do that, until one day they say to themselves, oh my gosh, I could do this and never tire. And then they find a way to make it a part of their way of life because it sends them soaring. So there's that way. So you're going to hear us always talk about a lot of curiosity, and we're going to tell you some stories of some thought leaders who've done it that way. The second way to acquire your purpose, to, I guess, connect with it, is what happened to me. It's a very passive way. You're just going along, minding your own business. And maybe you're doing something great in the world. I had an important job. I was a great dentist. I was using computers 20 years ago to fix teeth, 15 years before most other people. And then one day something happens. And we're going to tell you some stories about people like this. Something happens and they're thrown into a situation very deeply, and they come out of it transformed. It's the purpose definitely finds them, and you are powerless to resist your purpose when it finds you that way. And I'm in that category, and I'll tell you some great stories of others. And then the third way you can acquire your purpose is through mentors. Some people are very, very fortunate to have an opportunity to work with others who have found their purpose. And then the longer you're in their presence and you watch how they process the world, the more you tend to internalize all those ways that bring such great outcomes over and over and over again. And then one day something grabs you and shakes you, and you've already got all this training in your background from observation, and you find your purpose. So Liesl, where should we start? You want to tell some stories about category 1 from the Ever Widening Circles experience?
Yeah, I think a great example of number one, of this sort of diving deep into a niche and then finding your purpose that way, comes from a thought leader that we featured she's been on the podcast before. She's written a great article for us over on Ever Widening Circles, named Mary Liz Bender. And she has an incredibly wonderfully complex background. She was a musician. For a while she was homeless, and she was really felt sort of unmoored and without a rudder. And then she started diving deeper and deeper into the philosophy of the astronauts, with the knowledge that astronauts brought back from their travels, something called the overview effect. And so she became kind of like obsessed with space and the power that space has, and seeing the Earth from space has on turning people from these hardcore scientists, doctors, test pilots, into coming back to the Earth and becoming philanthropists and artists and people committed to humanity. And so she kept diving deeper and deeper into the world of space. She kept being more and more curious. She kept sort of getting deeper and deeper into the niche of wanting to learn about this idea of the overview effect and get closer and closer to these astronauts for a second.
And through rocket
that
filming,
came,
right?
Yeah, secondarily, she became what we would call, she lovingly calls like a rocket chaser. So she became somebody that was at the liftoff. She was doing videography and photography, and that's where she met her partner. And at one point found herself next to, I think, Buzz Aldrin and Bill Nye. And sort of in that moment, her sort of purpose really hit her. And it is to sort of tell people to cultivate empathy, using the wisdom of astronauts. So that's such a great story. And now she's got a podcast. Her mentor is now the person that coined the phrase, the overview effect. She has been to Mars. Well, the version of Mars that's over in Hawaii. And she is continuing to cultivate and cultivate relationships and educate people, and is now one of the few videographers, her and her partner, one of the few videographers that are allowed on the SpaceX platforms, which is pretty incredible. So she is just totally in this world of diving deeper and deeper into a niche until in a moment it hits you the power of what you're supposed to be doing. So she's one of my favorite
I have
examples.
to point out, this all happened between age like 17 and what, 25?
I don't know. I don't remember
She's
how
quite
old she
young.
was.
Yeah.
No, she's a bit older than me. So I think she's in her 30s now. But her life really did take off like 2 years ago, when she wrote the article for us and suddenly connected with Frank White. And then all of a sudden these doors kept opening and opening. And then I guess I was talking to her recently, and I guess her, within the span of like her contacting us to write the article and it coming out, it was like, I thought it was many, many years. It turns out it was something like a year, or like a year or two, which is really incredible that over the past, let's say 5 years, she's had this great, incredible trajectory.
Such that
Because
now she's friends with all the living astronauts.
Yeah.
I mean, this is, and I have to point out that, she was patient. She just kept at this passion. She kept diving deeper and deeper. And we should say that what happened to launch this whole new opening was that she put her phone number in the article she wrote for us.
No.
No?
It wasn't she put the phone number. No, is that she just reached out to us cold. She reached out to us totally cold. No, she reached out to us totally cold. And then she put her email address. So She reached out to us totally cold. We wrote the piece. Frank White had a Google ping for the words overview effect. And we put the email addresses of every writer in our articles at the end. It's a part of their bios. And he started following her on Twitter, shared it on Twitter, and then reached out to her via email. So she was sort of this like cascading effect of being able to, put herself out there and get sort of this coverage that then got her to this new place in life. Yeah.
That moment, right. Yeah. She just literally out of the blue that morning got a phone call from the person she admired most in the whole world. It's just a great story. And she's been like a rocket herself ever since. So I'll tell a story from the Ever Widening Circle, stories like that. That is just diving deeper, and then you wind up somewhere you never anticipated. I interviewed, and this is a great podcast to listen to, a wonderful evolutionary biologist. Don't let that turn you off, because that's not what we talked about. Dr. Tamsin Woolley-Barker. Look up that episode and have a listen. This is a woman who studied baboons, much like Jane Goodall studied chimpanzees. Tamsin Woolley-Barker studied baboons, and she looked at evolution and how it plays out and all that. And now she counsels captains of industry, about how human beings are actually not built socially. Our social structure is not like any other primate. We're not like the chimpanzees, gorillas, and baboons. We are actually more like ants. I know it's easy to take a hit to your ego. But what she means by that is humans, we are built to self-organize. That's it. Have you ever noticed, if it just works out at the end of a big picnic, everybody just jumps up and finds something to do that's in their wheelhouse, and the mess is totally cleaned up in 20 minutes? That's self-organization. You might be lucky enough to work in a place that's like that. But what happens in most workplaces is we hire people for their great skills and creativity and all this individualism and wonderful energy that they might bring as self-starters to our organization. And then we make them fit into systems that are so rigid, they don't get to use any of that self-organization impulse. And so she counsels captains of industry, about how to create a workforce that works well with the way humans are built. So this is a woman who started out somewhere and went deeper and deeper and deeper until she figured out there was this whole niche in business that connected to evolutionary biology. So I love that. Dr. Tamsin Woolley Barker, look up that podcast episode of the Conspiracy of Goodness podcast, or just bat this back and forth. Do you have anybody else like that you can think of in our stories?
Yeah, I think another good example of somebody in that sort of like find your niche and keep going, that then almost turns into, you know, a catalyst for that third category of sort of the mentorship category, is somebody named Eric Hollenbach, and he runs Blue Ox Woodwork, and he Blue Ox Millworks, excuse me. And he was a Vietnam veteran who came out of the war and was really searching and trying to find himself, and found himself falling deeper and deeper into woodworking and doing the kind of stuff that you take, you know, if a building that's historical needs, and it gets very specific, you know, if a historical building needs a specific piece of wood that's handcrafted, he does like these incredible handcrafts, not using machining, not using kind of technology of today. And through that, he really found his passion and purpose, which is twofold: one, to be working with old tools and working in old ways, and two, to be teaching kids who, like himself, growing up didn't really fit into the traditional education model, and just kept kind of failing out of every single thing that they were a part of. And so now he's sort of become that mentor that's helping young people find their purpose. Is now he's almost at this like next level where he's gone and found his purpose. And then I think this is a wonderful thing too, is that your purpose can be one thing, right? Your purpose can be woodworking and working with the old materials, and then at some point it can take a bit of a left turn and become your purpose is teaching people, you know, what you have learned over time. So I think that that's a really great example of the way that our purpose evolves. Hope Zavara, who you had on the podcast, she talks about this in a workshop that we recently ran, and you can see, if you're a member of the Conspiracy of Goodness Network, you can see the recording. She talks about this idea of, you know, if you find purpose or a mission in life, basically that becomes your rudder, right? And it's sort of like, you know, what you love to do and what calls you. And then when things out of the blue, in her case being a yoga instructor who teams up with a guy who runs a trucking company, and they come up and with something called Mother Trucker Yoga, you know, she can go from like wanting to be somebody who taught yoga to people to then wanting to be somebody who taught yoga to truckers. Like, you know what I mean? Like, once you find your purpose, it kind of gives you this rudder to find new ways of helping people. So Hope is actually a great example of one of the people sort of sideways on that one, not who I meant to mention there. But yeah, I think there's something really important about the ways in which, as we find our niche, as we find our purpose, we kind of become either a mentor to others, or we find different ways to help our purpose cultivate our purpose and bring it into new places.
Mm-hmm. And what I've noticed is that the people who have very strong sense of purpose and cannot be knocked off the mark are the ones who are connected to others. You know, because people are counting on you, and because you've seen, you know, shining eyes looking back at you. That is something that's hard to turn away from, and it'll really get you through some hard times. So this is level one. You just dive deeper and deeper and deeper in something that brings you delight, and you become so familiar with it that you start seeing ways to connect it. You got to look up Mother Trucker Yoga. Hope is unbelievable, and she's doing good in the world. There's not another more important profession right now than trucking, and truckers are in a bad way as far as their ability to get physical exercise, but she teaches them what to do in the cab. She teaches them what to do while they're pumping their gas. It's amazing, the stuff that we can all use sitting at our desks too. We want her to lead some kind of a event where she's teaching us yoga for people who sit at their desks and their computers a lot. She's great. So before we go to level 2, which is people that are following some train of thought, and then an event that connects in some way happens, and they are pulled in and never to return to the place where they started. So let's take a break, and we're going to talk about the second annual Conspiracy of Goodness Summit, which is a great afternoon of speakers like we're talking about here. I think Mary Liz is one of them, right?
I think she's going to be our musical guest this year. I
Wow,
don't want
that's
to,
great.
yeah.
Okay, no, we'll say nothing more, but we've got some amazing people at the summit, so you can hear about that in the next few minute or two, and then we'll come back and we'll go to level 2. Okay, we're back. All right, so we've talked about how there's 3 ways to cultivate purpose in your life. One is to just dive deeper and deeper into the things you love and let your curiosity be your guide. And eventually you get so deep in that that you just say, oh, I could never tire of this. And you find a way to live with it every day, maybe in a business way, maybe in a giving back way. The second way that people come to finding more and more purpose in their lives is by an event, usually a significant emotional event. And our best example of that is Topher White. You want to tell Topher's story?
Yeah. So Topher is an incredible thought leader who, I'll spoil it here for a hot second. He is saving the rainforest using old cell phones. So we'll start with that teaser sentence. And you guys have probably heard his story before. We like to tell it a lot because it's so incredible. But so Topher came to this roundabout way of saving the rainforests. He was an engineer by trade, or by training, I should say. And he was in the rainforests of Borneo. And he learned that basically that the rainforests were so loud that rangers couldn't hear a chainsaw starting up even 100 meters from the ranger hut, 50 meters from the ranger hut. It was just so loud in the rainforest. They were staying at a ranger station. They went out and there was all these trees cut down that weren't cut down the day before, and they didn't hear any of it. And it was, in our daily lives, you would be able to hear a chainsaw that close. So he realized that there was this problem of being unable to hear these chainsaws going off that were, these people coming in and taking down the rainforest. And so what he did was he kind of looked around, and this was he knew this was a problem. He knew he had the skills to solve it, and he just couldn't not solve it. And he found himself developing a way to take old cell phones, basically tune them, use the microphone to tune them to just hear the sounds of chainsaws, and then be able to notify. It turns out there's decent enough cell service that you can kind of daisy chain them together, and basically be able to alert a local ranger station that there was a chainsaw going off, and then that ranger could go out and stop the logging before it got too far. Just a side note on that, because I think this is pretty incredible. So that he is setting that up and working with local communities in Borneo. He's working, I think, starting in rainforests in Africa, and he's doing it in South America as well. And an even cooler thing that developed out of this was all those microphones are picking up so much sound. Maybe I'm biased towards this because it's big data and AI, and my partner happens to be in both of those. But they started listening to the sounds of the birds. They found the birds would change their songs, their calls, as the trucks rolled in with the people with the chainsaws. So they have been able to now be able to stop the logging before the chainsaws even start by just listening to the birds in the region. So to me, that's an incredible and now he's using similar technology to save whales off the coast of Ireland. So this is another great example of this catalytic moment of seeing this beautiful rainforest being cut down before his very eyes when he was just meters away, leading him to a technology that has now become a way of not only studying the rainforest, but also being able to save the rainforest, and now somehow working with whales. It's pretty incredible.
That is just that's being on vacation and being your life changed forever. Another story that I absolutely love to tell that's in this genre is a story of the man Damien Mander, who has discovered that single mothers make the best game wardens in Africa. Now just sit on that for a minute. There are people who think that what he's done and what he's discovered and learned and nurturing the project he's nurturing could be the greatest insight in conservation in 100 years. So his story is so great. He was a professional sniper in the Iraq War. He's an Australian guy. And when the war ended, he has a great TED Talk too, I think. If you look up Damien Mander, TEDx, these are powerful. Two of the most powerful TED Talks I've ever seen. So he tells the story much better than I do. But after the Iraq War, he was like, "What does a counterinsurgency specialist do with the rest of their lives?" Because he was a young man and very skilled at what he did. But and so one thing leads to another. He winds up in Africa, I believe, with a friend on a vacation, sort of a little bit Topher White story, and they are on a safari game drive, like are happening all over Africa every day with tourists, and they come upon a water buffalo, a female water buffalo that's in a leg hold trap, who has tried and tried and tried for so long to get herself out of it that she's torn her own leg off. And the game warden that they're with, the guide, puts the animal down right in front of Damien, and a switch flipped. He said he never gave two thoughts to conservation or wildlife or loved animals. None of that was on his radar screen. His whole life, he was a trained sniper. And then just like that, something about watching that man and how he handled the situation and what he was up against, he just knew that he had the training, he had the background to bring to this problem. And this is another thing I absolutely love about a lot of the thought leaders we write about. They connect things that no one ever thought to connect. And so what Damien learned was that that wildlife poaching, especially endangered species, is comes from organized crime. That's what's at the top of it. And one thing led to another, and he realized it was a war. He watched the way we were trying to take care of wildlife poaching for a year or two, and tried to train game wardens in his kind of counterinsurgency tactics. And he would run men game wardens through the paces. 100, an example he gives, he ran 123 men through the kind of 3-day training that he would have had, and only 2 remained. And then he rethought it, and he looked at all these tough as nails single women that were in these little communities all around the villages, all around these big game parks that he was trying to protect. And he said, what the heck? And he invited 25 single moms to come do the training, and all but 2 were still there on the last day. And he figured out they had a level of toughness and perseverance because of their life experiences that they could bring to this. And the number one thing he discovered was that they could de-escalate things. That rarely was a shot fired when a woman game warden was involved. They knew their communities. They could dive in and hear the scuttlebutt and get young men out of doing the thing they were just about to do. There's so much to this story. There's an article, if you put Damien Mander in the search box at Winding Circles, you're going to hear about Damien's story. But this is an exact example of how your life can be going along, and when you're in a transition, be open for these opportunities that really grab you by the neck and shake you, because that might be what you were meant to do. And Damien is literally changing the future for all of us by growing this giant organization called the International IAPA. I think it's, well, look up Akashinga. That is the project, the Akashinga. It means brave one. And you're going to find an example of this way that finding your doing good work in the world can turn out to be applied to something else and be just the right medicine for the problem. So what else? Do you have anybody else in that second category that you can think of off the top of your head?
Yeah, I think a great example, and this is a shorter example, is the story of a man in India whose son passed away. And I think that what's important about some of these stories too is that you don't need to go off saving the rainforest or go off, starting an anti-poaching league. There are ways that we can be working to find our purpose that are, we would call them maybe smaller, but still have a very big impact. It's a story of a man who lost his son to a pothole accident in India. It turns out one of the most dangerous parts of driving in India is pothole accidents. Basically, thousands of people a year are dying because they get in accidents related to potholes, and his son happened to be one of them. And he took it upon himself then, after that event, that terrible event, to start filling the potholes himself. He would go get the concrete or the asphalt and go out with his tamper and start filling the holes in roadways, and just became the guy who filled potholes. And that's what he sort of has done in his purpose and his mission in life. And he's he's really he's one of those people that's just working with a sense of purpose, because again, this event happened in his life, and now he hasn't started a giant organization. He doesn't have thousands of people doing it with him. He's just one man filling potholes and saving thousands of lives, and in his own way, by doing this. And so I think that's a great example of us not having to have purpose hit us in some grand way, rather finding purpose in sort of smaller ways that are, you don't have to go start an organization. You can just sort of change one corner of your life.
Smaller ways that add up, smaller ways that mean the world to one other. What's that parable about the guy walking along the beach throwing starfish back into the water, and somebody says, hey, there's 1,000 starfish here. You're never going to make a difference. And the man says, hey, well, it just made a difference to that one. So tell the story of the guy with the car, the guy that has that cool old car and he saves people who are stranded on the roadsides.
Yeah, the article is called The Highwayman, and it's about this gentleman who, when he was very young, his car broke down, and a kind stranger helped him, and basically told him to sort of pass on the good deed. And so he just drives now in retirement. He drives up and down the highway in California, and I think it's a coastal part of California, and finds people who their tire has blown, they've run out of gas, their radiators exploded, any of the things, and he helps them out, gets them back on their feet, and gets them back on their way. And he hands them a card that essentially says the same thing that the gentleman who helped him when he was a young man said, which is, take this and pass it on to somebody else. And I think that's another wonderful story of somebody who has taken on something that can be meaningful to others, but isn't, going and saving the rain. I think that one of my favorite things about that story, and about so many of these stories, is that there are so many different ways you can find purpose, and so many different ways that you can be helpful to others, that are not making the news, that are not big giant multi-million-dollar organizations or businesses. They are people doing kind things, and they are just as powerful to the average person, because they are connecting with the average person in sort of a deep way.
Yeah, that I'm not going to go into it too much. You can find this on the podcast too. The story of Merman Mike. Remember, he's a man in California that just loves to dive for the sake of diving. And so he started, to be nice, just started diving for things people lost. There was a woman who was visiting her mom for the last time, and her phone, which was in a waterproof case, but fell off the side of something very deep. It's very bad. And she lost all those last pictures of her mom. And just out of the kindness of his heart, he goes and dives for it and brings them back. No money exchange, no nothing. A lot of gratitude, a lot of hugs, a lot of smiles. You can look that one up too. He's doing amazing things in the world. So yeah, you don't have to save the rainforest. You can find your calling in just finding ways to make the world a better place for one other person. Okay, so
I was going to say, I think that leads perfectly into that third way that people can connect with their purpose.
Take it, because I love this. We have lots of articles about that third way.
Yeah, so the third way, like we talked about, is you're around people, others. You've met this sort of mentorship group, right? That helps you find, or mentorship individual who helps you find your purpose, right? And I think this one is, we write a lot about organizations that are like this, right? And maybe, maybe the individuals, it's like so many individuals come out of it, it's almost hard to like write down and have the names of every single person. But one of my favorite examples of this is Moa Farms in uh, in Hawaii, and it's a farm that's basically teaching young indigenous people organic farming techniques that indigenous farmers of Hawaii would have used, for centuries going back. And it's this incredible story of that follows one of the main women who now is helping to run the organization, but started out as a young person. And they help pay for kids' education. They help bring them sort of more than just the farming skills. And what I love about that one is you can very clearly see people stepping into their purpose. You can see young people connecting with a past that they haven't had any ability to connect with before. And in doing so, it kind of roots them in who they are. And then they're able to jump off and find different, bigger ways of having purpose. And I think it's one of my favorites because you can watch mentoring happen as you're watching. So if you want to look up that one, it's Maoa Farms, MA''O Farms. They're an organic farm in Hawaii that is teaching young indigenous youth how to do organic, use traditional methods to do organic farming. And it really is, you watch firsthand as you see these young people connect with their culture, connect with something bigger than themselves, and then use that feeling of purpose to do things like become doctors and become teachers and become members of the community, and then be so connected to the community that they come back and continue spreading that kind of joy and love in their communities. So that one's I think my favorite example. That one I always think about whenever we bring up this idea of mentorship and of being around people that teach you so much that then you find your purpose.
Mm-hmm. Now, it can happen also. I was being interviewed on a podcast the other day, fabulous podcast, by Andy Chalif. It's a podcast called A Wonderful Chaos. And they are having the hard conversations in a lovely way over on that podcast. So Andy told me that he found his calling because he was lucky enough to get a job with someone who was absolutely living with purpose every day. And it was just by accident that he wound up in this place. The job wasn't what attracted him to stay and stay and stay and stay and stay. It was this being able to watch a person with purpose in action. And so that's another, to Liesl's point. You don't, if you decide you want a life of purpose, you don't have to quit your job. You just have to find the meaning of your role at that job. And for gosh sakes, if part of the work you do doesn't feel fulfilling, but you've got the ear or the elbow of somebody who is living with purpose, that is this third path to finding your purpose, is to see somebody else doing it and take careful observation of how they react to everything in their lives. A great example that I recently got exposed to was this interview I did with Chip Conley. If you look up Chip Conley on the Conspiracy of Goodness podcast, Chip was the wise elder that the guys who started Airbnb hired. So he was only 43, but they were 27. So that made him the wise elder in the office at Airbnb. And they knew that they had the tech skills and all the out of the box ideas to revolutionize the hotel industry, but they knew what they didn't have was the wisdom of experience. Chip Conley what is arguably the guy who invented the whole boutique hotel movement. Well, he didn't invent it, but he made it what it was. He owned 52 hotels in California, boutique hotels, and was the darling. He's written books, and now he has a great movement himself about nurturing this notion of us paying attention to the wisdom of elders. But there you go. I mean, he was a mentor. Now he is a mentor. This is kind of the way goodness is passed down one person to another. Is that we have a lot of reverence for the process that we're in with others when we found our purpose. So, these are some great examples to get people started. Again, we're going to have a lot in the show. We'll have links to every single thing we've mentioned in the show notes. We have a great podcast organization that produces this podcast, Streamlined, and they take careful notes. So you'll be able to find the different stories really, really terrifically if you want to revisit them. So Liesl, as we go forward, you've got the Conspiracy of Goodness Network, the Conspiracy of Goodness Summit coming up. Both those two. One, well, tell us. Okay, I'm not going to go into it. Tell us where we can find all about your work and what you're doing with Conspiracy of Goodness.
Yeah. So right now, the best way to connect the Conspiracy of Goodness and the network is to come join us and get your tickets to the Conspiracy of Goodness Summit. This year, we really wanted people to be able to connect before and after. I'm a big conference head, and my biggest problem has always been like I leave the conference with a ton of energy and like having all these people on LinkedIn, and then I have no reason to connect with them ever again. So this year, what we're doing is we're giving everybody who buys tickets for the Conspiracy of Goodness Summit, we're giving them access to the Conspiracy of Goodness Network up until December 1st. So you'll be able to connect with people before, you'll be able to connect with people after. So if you are looking for mentorship, if you are looking for other people to support you on your goodness-driven journey, if you're looking to just connect with a bunch of people, right now is the time to go and grab your ticket to the Conspiracy of Goodness Summit. We are going to be talking about living with purpose this year. We have a lineup of incredible speakers, including several podcast guests, Carl Sona, Kenton Lee, Hadia Misa.
You've got Hadia. Wow. Okay, great.
And we are going to be talking about all the different ways that people can start living with purpose, the ways in which we can connect our lives to the ecosystem of the Conspiracy of Goodness. It is going to be really incredible. And we already have a bunch of people who are connecting over on the network and saying hello. So please do join us. Tickets you can get at conspiracyofgoodnessnetwork.com/tickets, or much easier, COGSummit, COGSUMMIT.com, and you can grab your tickets. There's tons of buttons that say get tickets. So I hope I made that clear enough. But yeah, it's going to be absolutely incredible. It's October 10th. So we do want you guys to join us there.
And can you just for folks who are new to the podcast, can you just take a little detour about what makes the Conspiracy of Goodness Network special?
Yeah, so the Conspiracy of Goodness,
it's a social media platform for people who are fighting for goodness in the world, right?
Yeah. So the Conspiracy of Goodness Network is really the first we found social media site specifically developed to help people connect personally and professionally as they work towards doing good in the world. So we are connecting people, we say the learners, the helpers, and the doers, the people that are just coming into this fresh and being like, I want to do good, and I just want to connect with other people who have that same feeling. Surprisingly, so many people are part of that. The helpers, the people that just, we know them in our lives, are the ones that are running the every single charity event. They're the ones who are like the energizer bunnies of wanting to be helpful out in the world. And then the doers, people that are out there doing the things, running the organizations, running the businesses. We look at it as an ecosystem. We all need each other to thrive and survive in this world that doesn't always appreciate goodness as a business model or goodness as a way of living one's life. And so it's this wonderful place where every month we get together for 2 events per month. You can come to those. They're also recorded, and so you can catch them later. And then we have lots of ways to connect and share our stories, share how do I put it? Share recommendations, and share ways that we have helped our journeys grow, so that we can help each other's journey grow. I think of it as a lot as like a puzzle. Like we all come bringing a piece, and we don't have all the pieces with us, but sometimes someone can share their piece with you, and suddenly your puzzle makes a lot more sense. So it's a really wonderful place where we try and put the social back in social media and goodness back in social media.
And I have to say, I think we created it because we needed it. Mm-hmm. We created what we couldn't find on the internet. Of a billion websites, we couldn't find a place where people doing good in the world could amplify each other's efforts. Mm-hmm. Everything from, does anybody know a good website builder? Does anybody know a good trademark attorney? To, I need a copier and I don't have any funds. Does anybody have access to office supplies? Those are the practical hurdles that we felt. Gosh, we went through 5 web developers till we found the wonderful person that helps us now. Gosh, it would have saved us a lot of trouble to have been a part of a network of people that we could just shout out the question and have 5 people tell us somebody we could trust. So that in itself is a part of that. Is it how to be a part of a trusting network of people that can bring out the best in our impulses and our skills. So thank you, Liesl, for everything you're doing for the big wide world. Liesl has always been someone who sacrificed for the greater good since she was 6. And I'm very proud to work with you every day and to watch how your life is going to have an impact on all of our future. So thank you for doing this. You could have done a lot of things. And
thank you for
this is
having
what
me
you
on.
choose. So thanks
you.
for telling some stories with me today. And we hope people love this episode and are fired up about finding their own route. And we're going to give you a whole lot of ways to continue the journey. Okay,
so
have a great day. Thank you. This is episode number maybe 49, 50. So there's a lot of practical advice about living with purpose in the previous episodes. So enjoy. We hope that this episode carries you through your week and you find all the joy and wonder that we've been talking about, and it elevates you to new heights. Have a great day.